Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host, and today we've got a very special guest. We have Mike Hlushko on. And Mike, you're a chief marketing officer. You've been in the C-Suite ranks for over 15 years. You're in B2B. You're also a company based in Europe. And you've got a lot of, I would say you're an enthusiast in marketing analytics, in processes, in building the teams that you can take successes and report back to the board. And you mentioned something to me earlier that part of what you really like to focus on is one of what is marketing's 4 Ps, product, right? And in B2B go-to-market, product has kind of been taken out of the marketing equation, right? There's a whole different department called marketing, or product. But I'd love to get your perspective on how this whole ecosystem is changing today. There's more skepticism amongst buyers than we've ever had before. It's creating a new barrier to growth than we've ever had before. So we're going to start to unpack that today. But before we do, I'd love to have you give a chance to maybe say a little bit more and expand on your background. And I'll say one thing, we were just chatting. We have one thing really in common. We both have twins. I adopted my twins, but having twins is a common bond, and we kind of nodded, and there's a lot of stuff in our lives that are very common. But if you wouldn't mind expanding on your background before we get started here, that would be great.
Okay. Hi, Steven. If to speak about my experience, my current experience, I work in on position of CMO at Modern Expo. It's one of the biggest in the world producers for retail, and we become a turnkey solution provider for retail and for last mile solution company. My previous experience, I was VP of development at Nova Poshta. It's the biggest private logistics company in Ukraine, which operate all over Europe. And I work both with marketing and with product at this company in international sphere.
So I would love to have us start out. The title of our episode here is all about enterprise buyer skepticism. And you've been around for the last 15 years. There's been a lot of changes in the last 15 years. In fact, just since 2001, okay, so just in the last 5 years, I was just looking at the 2026 Edelman Trust Barometer, and 32,000 respondents, 67% of them think that business leaders like you and I are being intentionally misleading, intentionally. And so they have a big recommendation, right, for business leaders in terms of how do we address that trust issue, that skepticism that's out in the marketplace today. And I know that you've thought about this quite a bit. How do you think about how trust has changed, how buyers and how they view you have changed, and how you've had to adapt your go-to-market?
On my point of view, for enterprise business, the cost of a wrong decision is enormous. So skepticism is rational, but the buyer isn't being unfair. They're protecting themselves. It's the main point. And for us, the biggest challenge is building real trust with our clients. We build the trust through quality, history, and deep expertise in products and even in business of our clients. It's very difficult to convince people that Ukrainian manufacturer or business can be a truly world-class supplier or manufacturer. The most effective part of our strategy is showing our capabilities, is showing our quality and our products. It's how it works. Just showing the real deep expertise in our domain can help us to build this trust. Trust, it's about building of a brand. It's the main value of a company. In my point of view, I have to highlight this. Just trust, build brand. Just brand, build extra value.
It's interesting. There's this kind of notion of the rise of brand again, right? It used to be that nobody would ever ask in a board meeting, hey, how's the perception of our brand doing? What they should be saying, though, is how are we combating this growing skepticism amongst our buyers that's getting worse and worse and worse over time? And they're waiting longer and longer and longer to want to even talk to us. So How do we build up enough trust to start the conversation earlier, to get into consideration earlier, to not get left off of the day one short list when they go to buy? So it's become not only a board level conversation, trust, but an execution plan, right? Like in our go to market, like what are you actively doing differently these days, right? Or maybe just focusing more on to build trust, to build those relationships.
We have to remember that the deal starts not on the meeting. When you open the door to the office, it's not the step and not the first conversation. It's the end of your conversation. It's a peak of your communication. And you have to remember that just 5 to 10% of market inactive process of finding new supplier or finding some goods. And most of companies always forgot about 90% of their customers. But you have to build consistent communication to speak about your cases, speak about your expertise, share your ideas and grow the market. You need to educate the market to make it bigger, to support your clients become bigger and bigger. When your even small clients can become in a few years an enterprise partner. That's why you have no to sell just during your pitching. You sell, your sales start much more before. First step, it's a quality products you provide and or services, depends on. Second step, it's consistent communication. Third step, it's to be prepared to every meeting. You have to know about your client more than they expected from you. You have to say, you need this and that, and we have solution, and it have to look like custom tailored made solution directly for these clients. But the magic is undercover. The real money, the real margin built just in big industrialized level. When your products are not like very similar, but it's industrialized, that you provide you an ability to cut out your expenses on product, but it can work like something special for every client, and you have to show this decision, and it is an answer on question you, because now in the time of AI, everyone in the room can check all data using the AI assistant, and everyone become a specialist in every sphere, and it's a real problem. But when you speak on one language with your client, if you have to take in account CEO pains of CFO or CMO of this company, maybe procurement or VP of development, and you have to communicate in your communication, in your PR activities, in your social media, the right language, the right ideas you have to share everywhere you can, and it can build trust. It can close the deal at the end when your sales manager or BDM will be on meeting with your client and they show the decision directly for them. It's a magic.
One of the things that I want to really dig into there, because you said so many interesting things, but you talked about margin, you talked about understanding your customers' problems deeply, better than your competition, at building trust, at building confidence, at winning business. And how much does this deep customer understanding and building trust impact margin? And the reason why I'm asking that is we're actually just starting a series right now called The Revenue Logic of Customer Obsession, right? That like being obsessed with understanding the customer is something that's so important that we do. But how we connect that to revenue, profits, margins, loyalty, right? Revenue growth of the business. Because there's a study that was done a couple of years ago that Forrester did, and it was their customer obsession study. And they said that only 3% of businesses they deemed to be customer obsessed. But customer obsessed companies have a 49% increase in revenue, a 51% increase in profitability, and I forget what it was, but a big increase in loyalty as well. So impact of NRR and things like that. So I just heard you talk about margin. I heard you talk about deep customer understanding. How do you bring those together? Like when you're in front of the board or you're thinking about this, how is revenue, margin, profitability, and customer deep understanding connected?
As I mentioned, you have to communicate with your customer in the same language. It's not about English or German or French. You can split their bias and support their main goal. That's why you have to understand which problem you have to solve with your product directly for these clients. Maybe they want to reduce their cost. Maybe they want to expand their business, and it's very important SLA. For example, in physical products, it's very important on enterprise level. It's a difficult solution, and every delivery can take months. But when you reduce this time and you say, we know your pain, we deliver you in 1 month, not years. We provide highest quality, for example, and you can use our product years and you will reduce OPEX. Maybe you will invest at the first step on the CAPEX, and maybe this decision is more expensive than others, but you can reduce other expenses. You can reduce your expenses for electricity, for example, if we speak about refrigeration system. I know it's a big problem, for example, in the United States, on electricity consumption, because most of refrigeration equipment in retail chains are very old. But now in Europe, we provide new technology which reduce by 75% consumption of electricity, for example. And you always have to look on your product from the angle of your clients. You do not need just sell. You need to be a partner for your clients and support their goals, support their ideas, and support them in their journey to become a leader, for example.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what you're saying is do the right thing and you're going to get rewarded for it, right? You know, we're constantly asked to optimize for revenue, right? Everything's about pipeline development, revenue growth. But in order to have that as an outcome, you have to do what's right in front of that, before that. And so what I'm hearing is that you spend a lot of time developing relationships, understanding the client, making the right, understanding their world, whether it's refrigeration units, new ways to reduce costs. They see you there as somebody that's looking as them as an ecosystem, right? And helping them. That's something that we all strive to do, but we don't do it a lot. In fact, there was a McKinsey study that said less than 15% of companies actually use the voice of the customer to help them make strategic decisions. In other words, every strategic decision we make as a company should be put through the lens of how does it help my customer? And if we're not using the voice of the customer to make big decisions, then we're using our own assumptions, right? And I just know that you're very, very big on making sure that you're building the relationship, you're understanding, you're spending time with your customers. And that's something that we don't have a luxury of these days. You know, time is like our schedules almost run us sometimes, right? How do you have the time to be able to spend with customers, with prospects? And I know that you have a big kind of an exhibition strategy, right? Of exploring and learning that way. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
We always started to be a part of exhibition many months before it started. For us, it's never attending; it is be a part of. Yes, and the last experience which we discussed with you previous time, we started to use AI in very interested way. We built a system which grab all information from our CRM system, from website of our clients, of our potential clients, information about tenders, all news, all we can get. everything from open sources. We combine this information, and when someone as a stranger come to our booth, our manager can scan his or her badge, and the system gave immediately a follow-up and information about this client, and even highlight which of our manager has communication with that company, maybe directly with that person, and everyone have a chance to find a notice the real problem, the open tenders, which problem we have to solve, what product we have to highlight during conversation. And it looks like a magic because it's very interesting because major of our guests feel like we know about them. Even they don't know us. Yes, and it's a part of ABM communication now. It's about a part of ABM marketing. We have to be prepared. We have to speak about really matter for directly this client, not for a domain, not for a chain or company, just even for this person. If you know what it is, for example, chief procurement officer, his pains. It's prices, it's SLA, it's quality, and you have to build your conversation about these topics. If you speak about with CEO, you always speak about growing, about speed of delivery, about how efficient your equipment or service. It's totally support your sales. It's what I expect we will face, and like most of company will implement in the nearest decades. It's a must.
Absolutely. You brought up in there AI, and you had a really interesting point of view on AI because you said that basically AI has created a red ocean. And it was one of my favorite books is The Blue Ocean Strategy. It's an old book, right? But the idea is, right, that we all compete in the battle of competition and create a red ocean from the blood of battle. And we're all in there fighting it out versus carving ourselves out a new niche and competing in a bluer ocean. How has AI created a red ocean? And what do we do about that?
We speak a few words about that a few minutes ago, but I have to highlight that AI really built a red ocean for every company because you have to beat not just a bias or competitors, you have to beat AI because every clients have an opportunity to double check every information, and no one go deep inside and double check information from the lovely chat GPT or Claude, or I don't know, maybe Gemini, and you have to solve this question, and you have to show that your expertise is much more deeper than AI can provide, and the real quality of your service or product much more higher than just information which grabbed all over the internet. It's a problem you need to solve. That's why you have to beat AI before they start. That's why we started to use, for example, special optimization for our channels to even in a case when your client will try to find some information or double check it, they will have an answer from the LLM model built on your ideas.
Right.
It's a new kind of SEO. It's a part of marketing today, and we have to use it.
I want to give you time to talk about what we haven't covered, right? What question haven't I asked? You've got an audience of C-suite executives here that are going to be listening to this podcast. What's something that we haven't touched on that you think would be really important that we should talk about?
I would like to share how to all this personalization can be actually profitable. Classical enterprise, every deal is its own separate adventure. Everything custom, no economics, it doesn't scale. The real magic and the real business model, as I mentioned before, in the industrialization of solution. Underneath you build standardized cost optimized solution. On top you deliver the value of each one individually, formed entirely around that specific client's request. But to the client it feels bespoke, and the relevant part or genuinely how would better to say, is, but the engine underneath is standard. That's how you grow through penetration into enterprise accounts. You share relevant cases across markets. You lead with the client's specific needs, and you let a standardized solution carry that value. That's why you can your industrial economics balance your cost for personalize your decision. When it built on expertise, and for example, biggest both company I worked with, it's No Posta and Modern Expo. They totally follow idea of lean. It's lean. It's Toyota started this idea. It's a process when you cut off everything which do not bring value for your customers, and at the end you have a quality lean process which every step of it brings a value. That's why you reduce everything which produce like garbage, unnecessary processes, unnecessary equipment, for example, or things you have to solve, and it's bring you pure economy, and you can increase your margin. And in this case, when you have generally built business processes of producing of your service or products, you can bring high quality with best value products for the market.
I want to make sure that I have time to ask you. You've had a long career, you're still going, but out of your career in marketing and so many years as a CMO, what are you the most proud of?
I always say that the CMO and role, you always have to bring the new idea, some energy to a team, but the core engine is the marketing, all of it. We built now a matrix structure of teams and processes that works like a growth engine for whole business. It has three parts and it works together. First part is product parts. It's team who analyze the market, competitors and clients, and package and adapt the product. Second part, it's executive hub. It's team who produced everything from creatives and landing page to exhibition, for example. And it's a part which bring all idea to life and bring all campaign, transform it to opportunity for a business. And third part, it's regional growing team. For example, they have to adapt all ideas to current market and to keep your how it better to say, and work with local clients, local media, for example, and always check your ideas on the local market. And that's bring you an opportunity to fast checking of every hypothesis in different market. In case of success, you can multiply the success to every market. A great opportunity to make industrialized method in marketing, and it was like for me like aha moment. We can make a team which will work like engine.
I love it. There's so much that we've talked about here that I want to kind of bring it down to, like, if there was one thing that you wanted the audience that's going to be listening to this to take away, what would be the one most important thing that you'd want to make sure that we knew?
If to sum up our conversation to a short story, you have to remember at any given moment only about 5% of the market is actively looking for a supplier. So the deal doesn't start when the buyer sends an RFP. It starts long before that, and you win it long before that. You win it with a quality product, with consistent communication that never goes quiet, with real preparation for every single deal, and by breaking the client down to the molecule until you understand their business better than maybe better than themselves. I don't know. It's when your product and your communication actually solve their business problem and you speak the same language, it stops being a sale. It becomes a partnership, a win-win. That's the whole game. it's how it works in my case, and that's how I try to multiply it in different market.
I love the notion of knowing your customers better than they know themselves. I mean, the idea there in my mind is you want to be perceived not as a vendor or a supplier. You want to be perceived as a peer, right? As a colleague, as somebody that they can learn from, as somebody that can help them, right? A vendor or a supplier is lower in terms of importance to them to accomplish what they need to accomplish, right? And none of us want to be a vendor or a supplier. And that's what they're demanding these days is you've got to know more about us. You've got to help us. And you've got to start early. And it's got to be included by your product, by your service, your knowledge of the industry. You've got to weave that all together. And so I love that takeaway. And I just want to say, Mike, that the whole mission of this podcast is just to bring different perspectives from different C-suite executives from all over the world together and share. And I just wanted to say thank you for coming on and sharing your perspectives with us.
Thank you, Steve, one more time. It's an honor to be a part of your journey.